Call of the call the order of the Winthrop Town Council meeting agenda at 6 p.m., April 6, 2026. Let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Lacking a couple council members, Linda Caprera, Shannon are not going to be with us tonight. Doesn't look like. If they do, they join the Zoom later. So I'm going to start off with the, yeah. No, we can start off with that. I'm going to open this up for public comment. I would ask the people that want to come up and make a comment, please kind of form a line behind there so I don't forget anybody, and come to the podium, state your name and what you like to talk about.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here just to provide some public comment on the school budget discussion coming up tonight. My name's Amelia Arnold, and I have a first and a fourth grader in the district. As you continue to discuss the school budget for the next school year, I wanted to share my perspective. Prior to this year, my sons had class sizes ranging from 13 to 17 students. When the 2 classroom teaching positions were eliminated at the grade school for budget constraints, I understood that difficult decisions had to be made given our circumstances. As a result, their class sizes were predicted to increase this year to 17 for first grade and 20 or 21 to fourth grade. However, when the school year began in September, my fourth grader's class has ranged from 21 to 23 students, and my first grader has an astounding 20 to 21 students throughout the year. I do continue to remain understanding of why that happened. As I mentioned regarding the cut teaching positions last year, there was one consistent message was that all the cuts were necessary due to the decreased enrollment, and that increased enrollment would bring additional funding and be a positive development. While I'm struggling now is that we're seeing that increase enrollment. Last year at Winthrop Grade School, the enrollment was 371 students. This year, the budget was constructed to have an increased prediction of 387. However, I hear that now enrollment is over 420 students as it stands today. That's an increase of over 50 students from the last year, a 14% increase. And yet in our current budget draft proposal, there are no consideration about restoring the teaching positions. Instead, the current proposal actually reduces the peak teacher from full-time to half-time, one of the services my son has taken advantage of this year, which has helped with those large class sizes. So what I'm really concerned about, though, that I want to bring to your attention is how the current budget discussions have been approached. I keep hearing that we have a 5.4% increase in spending in the school budget, but this number needs to be reframed. You should be discussing the school budget in the same way that you're discussing all other town departments, what the increase in spending is, but as well as what the increase in revenue will bring, and then breaking it down to the true impact on taxpayers. While I admit I don't have all the behind the scenes information and numbers, I was able to review the presentations that we've given from Dr. Foley here to the town council and also the school board and pulled some information out. The 5.4% number that you keep citing or hearing is an increase in spending for next year, and it's around $800,000. However, the tremendously impactful missing piece of information in this conversation has been that there's a increase in revenue from the state of Maine for general purpose aid that's $589,000. My understanding is that a good portion of this is related to that increasing enrollment that I just talked about, as well as the student makeup. So what does that really mean for taxpayers? Using the information that I was able to get, it means that it would be an increase of around $210,000 to taxpayers. That's actually less than a 1.5% increase from what they were able to, or what they had to pay this year, and less than what the operational budget increase or decreases for the town of Winthrop. So regarding the school budget, I've heard counselors say that they want to see the number under 5% an increase, under 3% an increase. The current budget proposal meets both of those at less than 3%. And additionally, you could even add in 1 or 2 of the lost teachers and still meet those numbers. So while I don't While I acknowledge I don't fully understand all the complexities of education budgets, enrollment formulas, and state subsidies, I do strongly urge you to consider this significant enrollment increase, particularly at the grade school. We should be prioritizing adding classroom teachers, not reducing staffing, and investing any additional funding we're receiving back into those teaching positions. Student achievement has been identified as one of the 3 primary goals and priorities in building this budget. So I urge you not to shortchange our grade school students, particularly those with the largest class sizes that would be in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Our current 3rd and 4th graders began school during COVID. They wore masks, they practiced social distancing, they experienced quarantines, and for many that could have lasted weeks or months. These students have already faced significant disruptions for their early education. We should be investing in their future and ensuring they have access to the same opportunities and class sizes that the students before them have, or I fear you're going to see all the hard work we've been working on improving graduation rates for naught when this cohort of students continues to go through school. Creating learners that feel seen and valued starts early and will be hard to repair if that does not happen. Winthrop's always had a reputation of strong schools, so let us ensure we continue the education needs of all the students and invest in the grade school as well as the other schools with our upcoming budget. Last week at the school board meeting, our town manager, Anthony Wilson, pointed out that the school board and town council are on equal footing and you don't oversee the school board, so I urge you to listen to their recommendations. Their role is to ensure that a responsible budget put forth, and that's your role as well. So I hope that you can work together for that. And I'm just going to close by letting that sink in. For less than a 3% increase cost to taxpayers, you can fully fund our school budget. We shouldn't have to be discussing any cuts tonight. You should keep taxpayer happy with that. Your teachers are going to have better classroom ratios and time with students. And students will have better access to education and increasing their achievement. Do you really want Winthrop to be the town that continues to spend significantly less per student than our neighboring districts? I hope that you would agree that we want the reputation that both our town and school have to be a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Julie McFarland. I'm a Winthrop resident and I have 2 students in the Winthrop grade school. I also came here tonight to listen to the discussion about the Winthrop Public Schools fiscal year budget for the 2026-2027 school year. I'm also in support of hearing everything that they've put forward and that we have needs in our schools and we have maintenance that needs to get put forward, and they've put together a thoughtful and fiscally responsible budget. And I would love to see that additional teacher that they have discussed before get added into this budget. As we just heard, our enrollments are growing. Our students deserve class sizes that are smaller. We want that for Winthrop. We want people to keep coming here and building this town. So I just came here tonight to keep listening to this and in support of our school budget and even potentially increasing it if it meant bringing in more teachers or not cutting the peak program. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Bollier. I own a little food cart. I'm here to get my license to be able to set up in Winthrop. I was told that I had to attend one of these meetings. I've had my little food cart for 3 years. Do events mostly. I work a full-time job and do that part-time. Don't know what else I need to get from you guys.
Oh, thanks for coming. You are on the agenda and we're going to
Okay.
get to that part. This is just public comment if you had something else to say, but thanks for coming. All right. Now we're going to move on to, of course, we have it here, Anthony. I guess it's item 024. Consideration of the property abatement application tabled from February 26.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move to deny the abatement request pursuant to Title 36 MRS 841 in case 2026-01.
Second.
Any discussion? Go ahead. Microphone.
Always. I attended the first meeting, but not the last. Any problem with me voting?
Oh, no, that's fine. You guys have any problems with him voting on this? No. Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Okay. All are in favor? All are in favor? Thank you. Moving on to items 052, public hearing for, was it the Albsum Cider Company Special Amusement Permit Renewal Application? Open discussion?
Make a motion to to approve the special amusement permit for Aslam Cider.
So this actually calls for a public hearing, so we need to have a public
Yep.
hearing first and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
make a motion.
Yeah.
All right.
Any public discussion? It's all right. Any discussion?
Are there any representatives here?
Thank you.
So yeah, we've just had renewing our live, special amusement permit, and yeah, we've had a great time hosting local musicians and supporting local music, and we just want to keep doing that on a regular basis. So
Is there anything changing from what you've done in the past?
no, just keeping the same sort of program we've been doing, which is just on Saturdays from 5 to 7, maybe adding a couple shows in the summer. And yeah, doing like one ticketed show in the summer this year. So that's about it. And yeah.
And is the music amplified or?
Yes, it is, but it's inside for the most part, and then we have some outside. But we've tried to work to keep everything pretty quiet, and our closest neighbor is pretty far away, so I think, and we're pretty tight with them and talk with them about how they feel about our sound. So yeah, always open to talk to them and keep kind of that relationship back and forth. So
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I guess the age-old question is, Anthony, we haven't, and the police chief's not here, but he doesn't have anything to report.
No, but he knows of this and had no issues.
Great, thank you. All right, so we got it. Andy made a motion first, so we'll kind of
Second.
tail off that. Second, any other discussion from the council? Yep, close the public hearing. All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor? So y'all are in favor? Moving on to items 054, it's the public hearing for Island Brewing LLC Special Amusement Permit. It's a new application. I'm going to open up the public discussion. It's 6:12.
Hi, Connor Lacasse, one of the managers at Island Park.
Evening. Anybody have any questions?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have amplified music there?
We do some, I mean, it's inside as well. We try to keep it to acoustic sets, but some musicians do bring like a couple of their own PAs. So it's not ours. It kind of depends on the musician.
You're not going past 7?
It's 5 to 7 is, what the plan is.
Do you know of any complaints or anything, Anthony?
No complaints.
All right, any other discussion?
Thanks.
Thanks. Let's close the public discussion at 6:13. I'll entertain a motion.
To approve the special amusement permit new application for the Island Park Brewery LLC.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, all are in favor? All are in favor? Thank you. Move on to items 056, consideration of the transient seller permit application for, is it Yeti Dogs LLC? Good evening.
Yeah. Do you want me to start over?
I wouldn't say it's quite necessary, but thank you for coming. So,
Yes, thank you.
but I guess, can you give us a little more details? You're selling downtown?
Yeah, I'm currently at the Vault. I go, well, my first event was last month. Got the 30-day permit and then come to this to get the rest of the year. But that'll be once a month. And if anything else comes up in Winthrop, I mean, I'm happy to come as long as I'm available.
Discussion. Anything from the public?
I'll move to approve the special amusement permit. transient seller permit application for Yeti Dogs.
Second.
Yeah, that's. Okay. All in favor? All are in favor. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
All right, now we're moving on to items 057, discussion of the Winthrop Public Schools fiscal 2026, 2027 budget.
So I'm going to set up Dr. Foley's presentation here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good evening, and thank you for your time and inviting me back to give you some additional information. Joining me are the members of the school board, Board Chair Alicia Lawson, if you just would wave, Tim West, Libby Wright, Jason Burnham, and our newest member, Aaron Storts. And also with me this evening is Kim Damon, who is the president of the Teachers Association. We appreciate the opportunity to present this additional information this evening. At our last meeting, there were questions about per pupil spending. The reality is this: our district is not just low, we are among the lowest in the state and the lowest within our cohort. That context matters as we discuss what this budget is and what it is not. When we compare ourselves to districts of similar size that are not a part of the RSU, and this was a request by Roy, thank you for that.
Thank you.
We are still near the bottom, second lowest, just above Lisbon. The statewide average per pupil spending for FY26 was $19,310. Our request for FY27 is $18,598, still below the FY26 average. And it's important to remember that Maine already ranks last in New England in per pupil spending. So the question before us is not whether we are spending too much. It's whether we are willing to invest enough to provide the level of education our students deserve. I've been asked whether this budget can come in below a 5.4% increase. That question focuses on one number, but not the full picture. When we account for revenue, the actual impact on taxpayers is a 3.28% increase. That is the number that truly matters to our residents. We can certainly reduce the budget further if directed, but we should be clear about the trade-off. Fewer opportunities for students, larger class sizes, and compromising our ability to meet basic safety needs. That is not a path toward excellence, and I do not believe that is what this community is asking for. This proposal increases expenditures by $798,000. At the same time, we have worked to offset that with $506,000 in additional revenue. The result is a net local request of about $292,000 and a $15.5 million budget. That is a measured, disciplined approach, one that balances fiscal responsibility with the needs of our schools. Similar to what the town does, we've separated the budget into operations and capital to provide greater transparency for you. Of the 5.4% increase, only 2.5% of that increase supports day-to-day operations. 2.9% is for capital improvements. These are not enhancements, they are necessary investments. Flooring, painting, and maintenance that every district must address. For years, these needs have been deferred. And as you know, the can we keep kicking down the road is no longer just dented, it's really rusting through. Delaying further is only going to increase costs later. I've also been asked by the council to try to improve long-term planning, and we're doing that. We've begun building a capital framework, including a turf reserve and a defined capital improvement line. The next step is expanding reserves, such as for the fuel volatility, which is considered best practice, which I believe that Roy has suggested potentially for the town. That's a great idea. While we have not added those additional reserves this year, we are laying the groundwork for future years. The projects before you, the chairlift replacement, roofing, parking lot sealing, and equipment upgrades are not optional. They are responsible, necessary investments to maintain safe and functional facilities. You also asked about the cameras at the grade school. The current system is over 20 years old and no longer meets basic safety expectations. There is no grant available that I know of to address this in the needed time frame. This request has already scaled back half the coverage of our other schools. If reductions must be made, this would be the first item I would recommend cutting. But I do want to be clear. Doing so would mean knowingly delaying a needed safety upgrade. We will always continue pursuing whatever grants we can, as we do every year. This budget already reflects difficult decisions. We have reduced wherever we can, cutting staffing, including administrative and special ed positions, reducing the gifted and talented program, reorganizing transportation to save over $100,000, reviewing historical spending with every line. These are not easy choices, and they do have impacts. The board did also consider adding a teacher to reduce class sizes, a move that would have increased the budget even further. They chose not to, keeping the increase at 5.4%. That reflects restraint and a clear awareness of taxpayer impact. When I was hired, I was given 3 priorities: strengthen the board administration relationships, improve graduation rates, and increase student achievement. We can build relationships without funding, but improving outcomes requires investment. There's just no way around that. Doing things differently, whether through staffing, training, or curriculum, that comes with a cost. We understand the weight of asking for taxpayer support. No one takes that lightly. But this budget is not about excess. It's about maintaining quality, addressing long-delayed needs, and making targeted investments in student success. It is thoughtful, responsible, and it reflects, I believe, the values of this community. And I hope the town council can support this budget. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Dr. Foley, thank you again for coming out and presenting. So I had a question last time, and I just wanted to see if you were able to get the information. I was wondering where the concentration of the new enrollments were last year, or was it kind of evenly distributed, or do you know?
Yes, and I think I addressed that in the memo that I sent, which for the current year, and you're talking about that, there are, and I know there was some other data quoted, but I'm really quoting from October 1st to October 1st because we have to submit that data to the state. And so there are 36 new students, and 44 of those students were at the elementary school, 8 were at the high school, and the middle school actually went down by 16.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Foley, for this presentation. I do just want to acknowledge that I've been able to discuss a lot with you and other members in the community that have really expressed their support for the budget as is presented at a minimum. And I want to say that at 3.2% increase is a lot better than what I initially had anticipated, to be quite honest. So, moving forward, I know you're probably looking for some direction, and I think the members here should probably provide some comments in regards to that. But I'm satisfied with the work that you've done and that the board has listened and certainly has participated in finding solutions towards this. Because I do think, when you first came on board, I think I was pretty clear on where I saw deficiencies in the process more so than even just the numbers themselves. And you've addressed all of those as far as I'm concerned. So I thank you for your diligent work and in developing this process, because I think it's an important discussion that we have to have. It's important that the community is engaged and, gives us that feedback. So I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to say thanks as well for taking the time to respond and provide all the information. I think that I think we're at a point, given the fact that we've been constrictive with the, the position, adding the new positions or resisting adding the new positions to keep the budget down, the capital improvements that are needed. I'm glad to see those happening, at least a plan to get started. And I think we're at a point where I think I would be on board with this budget.
Thank you.
You're younger, you go first.
So I was going to say, I needed a minute to think, but knowing that, we have a lot of concentration in the grade school, that's what I kind of suspected. And knowing that we have to, carry those students, more of them, right, through the years. And, I'm hopeful that we can have not a big increase next year. So I hope we can work towards that. Obviously, if we have another 50 kids, that will change things. But, I think I could be in support of this right now. And I think we are scrutinizing it enough from our level. And, I would look here the next few years, we continue to do so and make sure we keep these budgets as tight as we can. But I think for this year, knowing the new enrollment, I would be in favor of this. So.
Thank you, Zach.
Yeah, I'm pleased and gratified that with all the various issues and necessary things that had to be dealt with, that you maintain the budget that you have and accomplish what you have with it. Good.
I have one quick question. There was somebody from the public came up and gave us a lot of different numbers, as you heard tonight. And where are we landing with some of those numbers? I think they were saying it was under 3. Nick, do you have any different numbers? The numbers are what Dr. Foley presented.
So Nick checks all the numbers.
I know he does. That's why I would just verify.
I rely on him for that.
Yeah, no, that's why. And thank God he's here, because I just had to ask that question. So, all right. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I think the previous person was just talking about how much overall maybe we got more in our 279, but there's other expenses and some revenues are maybe down. And that's why I feel confident in the number we presented around revenues.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Roy.
Oh, yeah, this has to do with that. When you spoke the last time, there was some question about, and I forget which revenues they were, but there was some question about what the number was going to be. Have you firmed that up? Do you have a better idea of what we are looking at?
So this would not the number that we quoted you tonight is firm for next year, but I think what Linda was referring to is that they have done the EPS formula. And I don't know that they've had the final vote on that, but there were 4 scenarios that were sent to me. And in all of those, it would work in our favor, some more than others, right? And so, so next year, potentially, if we went with the best case scenario for Winthrop, we would receive an additional 273,000 over the revenue that we currently have.
Okay.
Right. And then if we went with the worst case scenario, we would only gain like $1,700. But in no scenario that they provided with me would we lose money, which I think was Linda's concern.
Okay. Thank you.
I was just going to say, since I think the last time that you were here in attending the school committee meetings, we've removed some of the variables that were unknown prior with the, you guys have come to a tentative agreement with the union. Has that made it so you're more comfortable with your budget projections as they stand right now?
Yes, based upon everything we know as of today, I feel pretty confident with the 5.4%.
Yeah, and to Roy's point, that's the additional funding for if one of the students needed extra services, we would get. Is that what these numbers, the 1,700 versus?
That would be based upon how they end up finalizing the revision of the EPS formula.
Okay.
Right. So it really has what they provided with us is this is what you know you're getting this year, right? And that's final. And if we do this revision based upon what you got this year, if everything was equal under scenario A, you'd get like 273,000 more.
Okay.
Then there was a scenario B, and a lot of that is based upon the mill rate. So there's a 50-50 in there, 75-25, and a 90-10.
Okay, that's okay.
Right? And so they just haven't, I don't think they voted on the final one.
No, that makes sense. I was wondering how they kind of, okay.
Calculated it.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, if I might, just so our school board members here and the public understands, we're going to have a public hearing on the school budget on April the 27th. And then you'll be asked to vote on the budget at that time. And that's a critical date because we have to have a school budget approved at that time in order to ensure that we get the ballots done so that they're ready 30 days in advance of the June 9th election for absentee voting. So mark April 27th on your calendars. It's going to be a big day.
Moving on to items 058, discussion with consultant Regan LaRochelle regarding the establishment of a new downtown tax increment financing, which is the TIF district. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, town councilors, and Mr. Manager. My name is Reagan LaRochelle. I am from LaRochelle Consulting, and I am a tax increment financing consultant. Just in way of background, I have been doing consulting on tax increment financing for over 10 years. I was a member of the Augusta City Council and served on their TIF committee, and I have written their TIF policy along with several others in other communities around the state. I consult for both municipalities as well as developers that are approaching municipalities requesting TIF districts. Currently, I'm working in Ellsworth, Lewiston, Hollowell, Chelsea, Monmouth, and probably somewhere else I'm not remembering right now. So anyway, I've been all around, and this is absolutely my favorite part of everything that I do, which is educating elected officials on tax increment financing. So I've spoken with your town manager. My understanding is that you have an interest or would like to learn more about establishing a downtown TIF for Winthrop. So what I've done tonight is actually what you have is a presentation on municipal tax increment financing generally. I'm happy to go over this a little bit with you. For downtown TIF is a type of municipal, an MTIF or an economic development TIF. Winthrop has just had one that has expired in town, I believe. And so I guess I would just want to take some direction from you if you would like to hear a little bit about tax increment financing basics to start, and we can skip around. And I don't want to make this too long or painful for anyone, but again, this is my favorite thing. So hopefully.
I'd like to have you start right from the beginning.
Okay,
Please.
wonderful. Okay, good.
Whereas you had it.
I kind of think a good place to start would be with a map of the downtown business district. We know specifically who's included and who's not.
Well, if I'm,
Yeah, what a TIF is.
yeah. And if I may, I mean, that's a decision that will be made at some future point as to how expansive the boundaries of the TIF district would be.
I think personally, I'd need that up, if I was going to approve a TIF, that's one of the first thing I look at.
We're just she's just gonna teach us, some of us who may not know enough about it. She's gonna kind of give us from ground up, kind of what it's
Get it,
about.
I'm just
So then
letting my
that-
feelings known ahead of time.
No, I appreciate that, but we'll get into that. We'll get into those weeds a little later.
No, I was going to say that's a great point. And there's actually a whole step that needs to be completed before, which goes into coming up with the boundaries of the downtown TIF in a more kind of planned and strategic way. So that's definitely something that you will want to be considering as you look at downtown TIFs. So that's great. So we will start with what is tax increment financing. Tax increment financing, or TIF, is an incredibly flexible tool that is essentially a state law that is implemented at the local level. So it is used to attract new investment and fund local community projects. But as I mentioned, this is all negotiated, agreed upon, and administered at the town level. Oh, is there another?
There's another one, yeah.
Okay, great. We're just starting. So when we're talking about the creation of a TIF district and what goes into it, this is the recipe, if you will, for a TIF district, which is that it needs to include a geographic boundary. It needs to have an original assessed value. In other words, when the town council approves a TIF district, the value of the property at that time is recorded, and it's called the original assessed value. You need to have a development program, which is essentially the application that is approved at the local level and then also at the state level. And there is a public process that is followed, which includes a 10-day notice for a public hearing, that public hearing, and then municipal approval. In this case, do you vote as a town council? Is it a town council vote? At that point, the application is submitted to either the Maine Department of Economic and Community Development or Maine State Housing Authority, depending on if we are talking about an MTIF or an economic development TIF or a affordable housing TIF.
Can I have you just kind of explain the differences? It's like with.
Yes, I can. If you will wait a couple slides, we will get into that. Okay, perfect. So basically, how does a TIF work? The ideal scenario when creating a TIF district is that it allows a town and a developer to work together to close a funding gap in a project. And the reason a town would want to do that is because the developer is providing something to the town that it wants. So if someone's bringing a project to you, let's say it's 25 units of housing, and Winthrop is in need of housing, or if it is a business that's going to have 7 full-time jobs that it's coming to Winthrop. Those are things that the town would find desirable to be in the city limits, more revenue for the town and tax revenue. And so in those cases, the town would be interested in talking about ways to close a funding gap if a developer was having a hard time on a particular site that might be adverse to development, for example. So in this case, a developer would approach the council and request a return of the portion of the new taxes that they would be from the development that they were creating in the district. So a developer can ask for up to 100% of new taxes for up to 30 years. A TIF district is 30 years, and they have the ability to ask for up to 100%. The town council has the ability to do anything in that range from saying we're not interested in sharing taxes with you to we will grant you up to 100% of taxes for a certain time frame. It all depends on how valuable you feel the project is to the town, for example. In that case, if you were willing to go forward and create a partnership with this particular developer, you would create a TIF district and approve the request that they're looking for. Again, we'd go through the public process, and then the legal agreement for reimbursing taxes is called a credit enhancement agreement.
Reagan, can I add one thing to what you said? So in my studies of TIF districts, there's this clause, if not, but for. So TIF funding shouldn't just be viewed as like free money, but it's money that is necessary in order to, as Reagan explained, to close the funding gap so that the project can actually happen. And if a project can happen without TIF funds, we shouldn't just give TIF funds just for the sake of giving TIF funds. We should ensure that it's closing that funding gap, because otherwise that project that Reagan said that the community might want would not happen.
Yes, absolutely. There is a but-for clause. And you will find, or I guess I've found that I've been very busy in the past couple of years with developers who are facing costs that have to do with the economy, building costs, site costs that may, that have, inflation that has increased in the past couple of years, and needing to close those gaps in order to allow a project to go forward. So I've had a lot of developer requests to go in front of municipalities in the past couple of years for that reason. And even then, sometimes they don't get built. I would say in Augusta right now, we have 4 projects that have had the agreement of taxes being reimbursed if the project is developed, and the developer still can't get their financing together to make the project go forward. So just putting a little finer point on that. Whoops, I think maybe I skipped a slide. Okay. So again, what's in it for the developer? This is the opportunity where the town is literally investing in a project using yet to be created tax revenue. Remember, the tax revenue comes from the new development in the district. So if the project is never built, the town has no liability. It's only when new capital improvements are put into the ground, the taxes on that new value are what is at play to be reimbursed to a developer. And again, the reimbursement terms and duration are ultimately up to the municipality. So again, what's in it for the municipality? For a town like Winthrop, Again, if there are needs that your community has that you're looking for investment to fill, you would have priorities like you maybe need more housing. You would like more jobs in town to support the businesses that are already here. You would like to have a larger tax base. And so TIF allows the town to target investment in areas that they would like to incentivize. So let's see here. So for example, stimulating private sector investment, job creation, or other valuable work in a targeted location. The town can choose to grant a TIF or not grant a TIF based on how valuable they think the proposal is for the town. Another thing, the TIF captures up to 100% of the value and uses it in the development plan. And it's fitting that we were talking about the school budget here because one of the advantages of TIF and capturing the new revenue has to do with your school funding formula, your revenue sharing, and your county taxes. All of that is, there are advantages for TIF districts to do that. Sure.
Do those at the time that this is the value of whatever project they're working on is increasing, the tax value is increasing, are those increased figures the one used in county budget, school funding formula and all that stuff? Or is it deferred until the end of the project?
Nope. So what?
Is that what you mean by capture?
Right. And we can talk
Okay.
about capture right now. You set me up very well for that. So thank you. So when we're talking about capturing the new value that is being invested by a developer, the capture is where the town allows that captured money to go, whether it's captured value, which is creating new taxable TIF revenue, or uncaptured value, which creates new taxes for the general fund. So you can see in this little graph at the bottom here, a developer comes up to you and requests a TIF district be created around a certain parcel in town. The current value of that parcel is $500,000, or the current taxes on that parcel are $500,000, let's say. When you create the TIF district, the taxes on that base value are continuing to go to your general fund. The taxes on the new value, if you capture it, those are where the TIF revenue comes in. That's how TIF revenue is created. So capturing 100% of the new value in a district, taxes on that new value would be what TIF revenues are coming from. Okay?
So Reagan, is it accurate to say that that new value is sheltered from the state valuation, which has an impact on your county taxes and your school funding formula and your municipal revenue sharing?
Whoops. Yes. So TIF shelters against adverse adjustments to state subsidies and county taxes, which are based on the total valuation. So when you create a TIF district and you freeze that value, that's the only value that goes into your school funding formula, your revenue sharing formula, and your county tax formula. All of the new value that is created in the TIF district is sheltered for 30 years from those formulas. So
Value just, where
Is no longer sheltered.
is no longer sheltered. So that means that next year that's going to be affecting our full.
Well, so it
What I'm
will.
saying is our previous TIF district, that's a significant gap there.
Well, theoretically, yes, because the value of that TIF district was $4 million. Initially, it was $400,000. But you have to put it in the context that the total assessed value, and I talked to our assessor about this just last week, the total assessed value of Winthrop is more than $1 billion. So 4 million compared to $1 billion, it's not statistically significant.
going to.
That's correct. And to Aaron's point, we've been capturing that TIF revenue in a special account. Now that goes directly to the general fund. So we can use it to fund, to pay police officers or buy fire equipment or whatever general fund need that we have.
So Reagan, I have a quick question. It kind of involves what we're talking about right this instant. I was going to save it for last, but you're saying that's sheltered for 30 years. Traditionally, how long do you put a TIF district or TIF establish it for how long?
So that's a good question. The maximum for I'll say a regular TIF district is 30 years, up to 30 years. There was a law that was passed a couple of years ago that will extend it up to 50 years if you're using it for, I believe, transit or housing development use.
Okay.
But right now, if you were to create a TIF district, you could create one for up to 30 years.
So that's traditional.
I would say so.
Thank you.
Take say a raw piece of land, and not that I want something like this here, but you build like something like a hotel, you've increased the value of that property by 20-fold, whatever it is. The developer sees the funds for whatever that tax value is.
Right.
For 30 years.
So what happens is that let's say the land was zero and someone put a $20 million hotel on that. The developer still has to pay the taxes to the town. But if you shelter that $20 million, so it's not going into your funding formulas, if you shelter it, then the taxes on that new value are considered TIF revenue. And the town can decide whether they want to share the TIF revenue back to the developer or if they want to, or how much they want to keep for themselves to use for special projects.
Okay, so the benefit of the developer is the lower tax valued, the previous tax value.
The land, if it was zero, it'd still be zero, but they're big on the building.
Right. So essentially, they wouldn't be paying taxes for 30 years.
No.
No.
None of their taxes.
No, that's correct. And so I think we're going to have to sort of like reconfigure our thinking about TIF districts, because for the last 30 years, the owner of the mill, which was the TIF district, was incentivized to do one project. And as part of that credit enhancement agreement, that owner collected TIF funds for 30 years. That's kind of an unusual approach to TIF districts. In my opinion, what should happen is that we have a TIF district. As Reagan said, you have your original assessed value. The value grows. It gives you a pot of seed money in order to incentivize other developments. And so as opposed to just giving all of that money, Roy, for 30 years to a property owner, no, what you do is you negotiate a deal with individual property owners for individual developments in order to ensure that that project actually happens. And as I said, it's not meant to be free money. It's meant to close a funding gap where if not for the assistance, that project would not happen. It's not meant just to enrich a property owner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so there has to be a specific funding need. It's not just the fact that they're not
bargaining.
They essentially are paying their taxes to the town on whatever the value actually is on the property. As it gains value, their responsibility of taxes goes up.
That's correct.
They pay it to the town, then the town can in turn turn around and give them, if they're either in agreement or if other funding needs that the town wants to participate in, they can give some of that tax, TIF funds back.
And so I don't want to steal any of Reagan's thunder, but a developer should have to make the case to the town council that they actually need TIF funding in order to make the project happen. And so ultimately, the council on an individual basis would be approving each of those each of those deals. So again, I think the approach should be vastly different than it was 30 years ago.
Prior, yeah. Linda?
Seen anything like that?
The easiest way to understand this is if you have, I used to deal with this. I actually defended TIFs before the legislature. So basically, you have a project. The increased value in that project is called the captured assessed value of the project. The revenues, the tax revenues associated with that project, the town can either say the developer gets a portion back or they get nothing back, and the town can use it for infrastructure. So
They can use it for
Yes.
projects within that TIF district.
there's, yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So, but that's all it is. It's captured assessed value, taxes associated with that through negotiation with the town, either get a portion or all of them back. It really depends. That's it. In a nutshell.
Often a question was asked about how long a TIF lasts, and often, for instance, a developer wants to start a project and the financing is a little iffy. So if the town or other entity offers a TIF, okay, that makes the financing picture look a little bit better for the bank. The other side of that is that if a developer wants to start a project and has a lot of startup expenses and a big mortgage, often a TIF will be timed to last as long as the project is paid off, okay? And then at that point, the TIF ends. So, a TIF could be 10 years, 20 years. In case of an apartment building, probably going to be 20 years. That's the town's,
That's not necessarily the TIF. That would be one of the negotiated agreements.
that would be, yeah, but it's a
Something
TIF.
like
I mean,
that.
the town gets the money, then.
But like,
gives it
we're
back to
considering a
developer.
TIF on all of the whole downtown area.
Well,
But
you
there
may
might be a particular project. Well, whatever. I mean, there might be like a particular negotiated project that we, and it could be a handful of projects
Yeah.
that we use the money toward.
So
Saying that
actually.
TIF timing is a lot of times expense timing.
All right, so let's
So
let Reagan
that's
continue.
okay. No,
'Cause
you got, this has been a great discussion. So yes, so I want to make sure that we differentiate between a TIF district and what Mr. Weymouth was talking about, which is a credit enhancement agreement. The credit enhancement agreement is the legal document between the town and a particular developer that talks about how and how long and how much of that new tax revenue would be reimbursed to them to close the funding gap. So when you're talking about, when you talk, I cringe when people talk about giving someone a TIF because it's really a credit enhancement agreement is what you are. That's the document. And so when you're creating a TIF for downtown, yes, you are creating the geographical district for the downtown. Within that, and you would set up your downtown TIF so that individual property owners could come to the town and make their case about an investment that they were going to make on their property and how they might need to close a funding gap, for example. Otherwise, the town is sheltering all of the new value in the downtown TIF district and collecting the new taxes, the taxes on the increased value as TIF revenue, which can be used for specific expenses under state statute. What Winthrop wants to be able to do is, and we'll talk about the sheltered value and the tax shifts, but the ideal scenario is that you use your TIF revenue for expenses that you are using general fund revenue for. And that is because TIF revenue is not affected by what we call tax shifts. And one of the very valuable aspects of a TIF district is protecting that new value in the district from the tax shifts. So we'll just talk about that really quickly, and then you can tell me if you've had too much. And if not, we'll keep going, okay? So how sheltering works. So we've created a TIF district. New investment in the district creates taxable value. Okay, when the new taxable value, we don't have a TIF district. We're just talking about new taxable value being created in town. When taxable value is added to the state funding formulas, anytime there's growth in your municipal valuation, tax shifts occur. So you put in a higher value into your state aid to education, you're going to get less in aid to education. That's one of the variables that gets plugged into your ED 279. For your revenue sharing, same thing. Your municipal valuation is plugged into that formula. If Winthrop is richer, then the state says, oh, they don't need as much revenue sharing, so we're going to give them a little less. Same with county taxes. It's a percentage. You know, if Winthrop has a higher municipal valuation than other municipalities in the county, you pay a higher share of county taxes. As a result of that, as all of these shifts, you don't really capture your whole tax dollar, your whole new tax dollar. You have to make up for the loss in aid to education. You have to make up for the loss in revenue sharing, and you're paying more in county taxes. So that's what, when we're talking about a tax shift, generally, when your valuation goes up, that's what happens. So without a TIF district, new investment, your real estate valuation goes up, your state subsidies go down, and your county taxes go up. That's just what happens. The advantage of a TIF district is, again, it keeps that value constant in your TIF district. So the funding formulas don't pick up any of the new value in your TIF district. So you keep the whole tax dollar. And so when I say the advantage is you have a whole tax dollar and you can spend that on expenses that you would otherwise be spending general fund revenue on, you definitely want to do that, right? That's the advantage of a TIF. So again, this would be an example. A developer wants to build 50 market rate apartments. That might be a lot for Winthrop, but build 50 market rate apartments on an empty lot in an area that's designated by the town as high priority. The developer realizes a gap in funding. They need additional revenue sources. So they would approach the town to request a TIF district be created and a credit enhancement agreement granted. The developer needs additional revenue, the town needs new housing. So you would be working together with the municipal assessor to get a realistic future value of what that project would cost. Again, this is just another example to show you how the tax shift works. If you look at the column right before the green column that shows at the bottom $9.95 million, that is meant to show how much new taxable value would be created in that TIF district by that 50-unit development. So you have $9.9 million in new TIF revenues, or in new TIF revenues. This is the tax shift, and just to drive this home, what I have to do is plug in what the new value of that 50-unit apartment complex would be if it were not in a TIF district. And you can see how much aid to education you would lose each year, how much revenue sharing, and how much more you would pay in county taxes. If you look down at the bottom corner of $4.7 million over 30 years, you can see that that's what you would be needing to make up from all of those losses. Interestingly, that becomes 9.9, so say $10 million versus 4.7. This example shows that you would be losing almost 50 cents on the dollar for that new value not being in a TIF district. And I would say that generally around here, 50 to 60%, this depending on variables that the town has, is what you lose when new value is not sheltered by a TIF district.
Reagan, I am not familiar with the term MTIF. Can you explain what the M stands for?
So yes, that's how DECD refers to it. So it's a municipal TIF.
Municipal, okay.
Or economic development TIF. It's been traditionally called economic development TIF, but that's what they've been doing. So just back to the thing, we're creating a geographic boundary. We're determining that original assessed value, or the value that the district is going to be frozen at for the duration of the district, and writing your development program, public hearing and vote, and then application submitted to DECD right here for the MTIF example. I can go on and talk more about some items if you would like. These are requirements by state statute. For example, for a regular TIF district, people love to ask me if you can put the whole town in a TIF district. No, you cannot. A single TIF district can only be up to 2% of the total acreage of your town, and all of your TIF districts together, except for your downtown TIF, that's an exception that doesn't get included, can only add up to 5% of the total acreage. Same thing for value. For the original assessed value of a TIF district, no more than 5% of all of your TIF districts together. That can't be higher than your municipal valuation, 5% of your municipal valuation. And then there's some conditions around what should be in a TIF district. Again, we're looking to revitalize property. You're looking for commercial development. In some instances, rehabilitation or arts districts are included in different TIF districts. So those are just kind of some of the general rules for TIF that you don't necessarily need to worry about, but I would if I were setting up your TIF district. So sorry to get back to your question, Mr. White, from the beginning. So the most common TIF districts are the MTIF or the Economic Development TIF. So those are focused on economic development projects, market rate apartments. If there was a Rennie's or a big development that came to town, that would be considered for a TIF district. Affordable housing TIF districts, that is through Maine Housing, and again, 33%, so essentially 1 out of the 3 developments need to be affordable, and that is up to 120% of area median income. Those are your teachers, those are your entry-level police officers, those are your, people who are doing healthcare. So that can be owner-occupied homes, condos, and they have certain affordability requirements for a certain time frame that they have to meet, and Maine Housing deals with all of that. And then finally, the downtown TIF, which is a type of municipal TIF. And again, back to your question, it's meant to capture a traditional downtown. And the way that you will show the traditional downtown is by creating a downtown development plan that your downtown TIF district will be based on. So there's a whole process of creating kind of it's like a comp plan for your downtown. And that helps to define the boundaries of your downtown district. There are a couple of cool things about downtown TIFs. If you had multiple TIF districts in Winthrop, you could actually take funds from one TIF district and send them to the downtown TIF district, because there was a real emphasis on trying to invest in the downtowns and not allow kind of strip malls and other developments outside of the downtown to be taken away from the traditional downtown. So that's one aspect of it. And the other is that it's not included in those size and value totals that I indicated earlier. It's exempt from those. Again, just quickly, TIF revenues, how are they used? When you capture that new value, the taxes on that are TIF revenues. They can be reimbursed to the developer through a credit enhancement agreement, or they can be used by the municipality for specific expenses as outlined in state law. And I will say that there are examples. Augusta has a hotel on Western Avenue that it TIF'd because it was a $24 million hotel, and they didn't give any money back to the developer. They just kept all of the TIF revenues and used it to fund projects to offset expenses that their general fund would have had to cover. So it's entirely up to the discretion of the town what gets TIF'd, how those taxes are shared. So I just wanted to kind of make that point. The rest of this is talking about how TIF revenues can be spent. That's a little more in the weeds, but I just wanted to stop and see if there were any questions at this point. Yes, Mr. Weiss?
Again, no microphone. I had 2 things. One is if we've established a downtown business district, we have one now, but if we adjust the zones, whatever, are there any restrictions to offering TIFs to businesses outside the downtown district? One of the questions reasons I asked that is not all that long ago, we rezoned Route 202 commercial from one end of town to the other, except for a couple of very environmentally sensitive spots. So if we establish a downtown district and don't offer the same kinds of opportunities to the businesses out on two, and there are many of them, what kind of that's going to find us in a fairly awkward situation.
Well, I think what you can do, so I'm not a huge fan of creating a TIF district unless there is, with the exception of a downtown TIF, I'm not a big fan of this kind of if you build it, they will come mentality. So Winthrop could choose to create a TIF district on their Route 202 corridor, but I think it's just as easy to wait for a developer, especially if you have a town council that understands TIF districts and they understand that you are open to these types of requests, to have a developer come to you or a business that may want to expand out on Route 202 and just come and give you their proposal and then set up a TIF district for that particular lot.
But we wouldn't be restricted from doing that in any way.
No.
That's fine.
Nope.
Thank you.
Yep.
So you mentioned the hotel in Western Ave. So this is my one gap right here that I'm trying to understand. So if they didn't have a credit enhancement agreement with them, then is the benefit just because those taxes are still sheltered? Is that what it is? Okay, so the taxes are sheltered regardless of like.
Well, so there's essentially no benefit to the hotel.
Okay.
They don't even need to know. It doesn't affect them at all. They're still paying their taxes to the town. The benefit is to the city because that $24 million isn't added to their funding formulas. And for example, Augusta has big expenses that they fund with TIF revenues, including their economic development department, so that's 2.5 staff, the whole department. Towns that are smaller that don't have economic development departments, for example, you get to be a little more creative on how you spend your TIF revenues. There's many things to spend it on, but Augusta just has a big budget that they can spend those TIF revenues on.
Yeah. So maybe I think that confused me more. Sorry. So if this hotel, the taxes aren't sheltered, so there's no benefit to the developer. So could the municipality or town just claim that as a TIF without them applying to it?
Right.
Okay.
So the town can create a TIF district wherever they want to. They don't have to ask. Yeah.
Not sheltered.
Right. It's sheltered. The town shelters it.
Just to the town. Okay.
The town shelters it.
That-
Those new taxes are
That
TIF
makes
revenues.
sense. Yeah, that was my disconnect.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
So just to kind of jump off on that, so basically what you're saying is that you can establish a TIF district, but that does not require the development of a credit enhancement agreement amongst the developer. However, since the district is in place, we get to shelter any value that includes whatever they do, whatever they decide to invest in.
Correct.
Okay. And then with that, if we did do a credit enhancement agreement, and that's usually when a developer is going to come to us and ask, right?
Always, yes.
Okay.
You never offer one for no
Okay,
reason. no.
gotcha. Perfect. And then is it ever amended? Is that a possibility? Is it something that can be in the agreement, say, revisited annually?
Oh, for the credit enhancement
Yeah.
agreement? So that's a good question. I have not seen that. And that's because usually one of the benefits for a developer for a credit enhancement agreement is literally the name is credit enhancement agreement. So they will take that document and go to the bank and show that this is a revenue stream for them.
They need a constant revenue stream.
Right. It's this is where you're definitely getting this revenue back for 10 years.
I see.
And so that's kind of the advantage for the developer because the banks will take that as, enhancing their credit.
Yeah. Okay.
And to Andy's point previously, you can base how much that developer is receiving they have to meet certain benchmarks. And so they're having to invest, say, a certain amount in the property over the course of 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years. And so again, it's not just like handing a developer a check. No, we're going to hand you a check as you're meeting these benchmarks along the way of your development.
Yeah, you can certainly add all of that into your credit enhancement agreement. You know, you have a lawyer, negotiate that and come up with benchmarks, or if they're saying they're going to bring 5 jobs and they only bring 3, what is the implications for that, for their reimbursement? You can tie all kinds of things to their reimbursement.
So
That's why the burden's on them to show that,
I don't know if anybody else has some experience in construction, but it's kind of like a requisition. In construction, the contractor reaches a certain point and has to approach the owner and the bank and get paid for work to date, okay? And it's kind of the same thing with the TIF. The TIF we have now is way off base. It's over now, but
Can you come up with can a municipality apply in like a mixed district, like whether it's housing or the municipal or economic development? Does that happen anywhere?
So that's a good question too. So if you created a downtown district, again, I hate to keep using Augusta, but they've done a lot with their TIF districts, but Augusta has a downtown district. One of the things that I just put up on the slides is another great thing about TIF is that you can amend your TIF district at any time. You can put in a TIF district in year 1, and then, you see a property that's about to be developed and you want to add it to your TIF district instead of creating another district. You can make an amendment to add that property to that TIF district. You can change how you spend the money in your TIF district. You can change how much you capture in your TIF district. You don't have to capture all of the new value.
That can happen anytime?
Anytime.
During the
duration of your TIF district. The only thing that becomes inflexible is what your agreement is with the developer. So
Credit
you would have to
enhancement.
preserve that piece of the TIF district, but otherwise you can amend your TIF district at any time. So to your point, if Augusta's created a downtown TIF district and someone has proposed an affordable housing development in their downtown TIF district, they have amended their downtown TIF district to take out that particular property and then create an affordable housing TIF district with that particular property, because you can't mix them or overlap them in any way.
So Reagan,
up,
Sure.
okay? We really don't have a revenue loss unless we give the money back to the developer in a credit enhancement agreement or something similar. Then you really want to listen to me, Dave? Okay, so the money that we give back to the developer is offset at the rate of about probably 40 to 60%, you said, in our savings with the credits from the state and education. And, because we're not being looked at as a more valuable community. Valuable assessment. So we're about 40 to, depending on what we do, 40 to 6% ahead of the game, giving out a TIF.
Exactly. So
In round numbers.
Right. So exactly. Great point. So usually a starting point for a municipality when a developer comes to them is looking at what they would lose if they didn't have a TIF district. You'd be losing 40 to 60% of your new taxes anyway. So if a developer is asking for a 50% reimbursement for 10 years, it's kind of a wash for the town. If you're interested in the development that they're bringing forth, then a 40 to 60% credit enhancement agreement makes sense, because otherwise you would have lost 40 to 60% on that new value anyway. So it allows the town to incentivize development using, that tax shift, I guess you would say. Other municipalities, again, if it's something that is even more valuable to the town, something that you feel you really need in the town, and you might want to incentivize it at a higher rate, you can choose to reimburse 75% or higher. It all depends on, are they renovating a building that's, been vacant for 50 years? Are they, like I said, adding jobs? It's what is valuable to the town should help dictate what that reimbursement is and what the terms are.
Anthony?
So I have a point and a question. So I think one way to look at it is that I don't think you can assume that without a TIF that the development would have happened anyway. So take the mill, for instance, it's got $3.5 million more value than it did 30 years ago. And that $3.5 million in value probably wouldn't have happened without a TIF. So I look at it as sort of, you're constantly gaining. You may not realize the full effect of it for 30 years, but the community is going to be better for it. And my question for Reagan is that a downtown TIF would not preclude you from incentivizing some housing within that TIF, would it?
So part of MTIF, under MTIF is market rate apartments. So if a developer is coming to you and saying that they're planning on building market rate apartments, that falls under MTIF. So it would fit underneath in your downtown TIF district.
You said it would or would not?
It would.
It would. Okay.
If you and so market rate homes don't fit anywhere in TIF. That's not something that can be incentivized with a TIF district. If someone wants to create a housing development of market rate homes, they'll just have to build that on their own. If they are looking to make a third of those affordable, and again, we're talking up to 120% of area median income pricing on those 1/3 of homes or apartments, that would need to fall under the affordable housing TIF. And again, if someone were proposing that in your downtown, it would be a matter of amending your district if you needed to incentivize them, which you probably would need to do. Yep. So before your eyes completely glaze over, are there any other questions? This is a great discussion. I'm
Really have done a good job of laying it out,
I appreciate it. And I told your town manager that this is something that you can hear 2 or 3 times before it really starts clicking. So you guys have asked great questions. I'm happy to explain more at a different time, but it is something that needs to kind of be digested and come back with more questions. But I think you've really kind of gotten to the meat of some of this tonight. So that's it.
I got one more.
Oh, God, I'm not allowed to relax around here. You can almost have revenue neutral if you give back only a portion of the TIF, less. You're going to save 40 or 50%. So you give back 40 or 50%.
Right.
And you're revenue neutral. And then in the case of housing, you've brought 30, 40 apartments to downtown. People are going to walk out the door and buy something, and then in 12 years, 15 years, when the financial burden on the builders or contractors or developers is released through the mortgage having been paid off, et cetera, the TIF expires, and then we have a full tax rate. It's a win-win if it's done right, it seems to me.
Exactly. Yep. And it's a long view, right? I mean, and again, sheltering a large value in your town it's going to come on the tax rolls eventually. So there's a whole science to TIF.
It's a long game.
It's a long game.
That,
Yeah, well, I guess that's, it kind of goes in, it all goes together, right? But the captured cost estimate, who does that calculation? And is that based on how long we're going to shelter it for?
So if I'm representing a developer and they have a project, I go to the town's assessor and I say, can you put a realistic value on this once it's built out? And then part of the application for the TIF district is projecting out the new value, what the tax rate's going to be, so you can get a projection of the TIF revenue.
Yeah,
So
so
it should
there's
be
some
based in-
escalation built in, but okay, but it's
But
kind
again,
of,
it's 30 years,
yeah.
exactly. So it's kind of a best guess, and it's meant to show as an example, like I said, that tax shift and what the town stands to gain in new taxes.
thank you.
One more quick question.
Sure.
We've heard all kinds of pros. What are the cons of a TIF? Anything?
So I
Got 'em
have
right up
that
there.
right up on the screen here. So again, the pros are that it's a locally created, negotiated, and administered tool. It avoids the tax shifts. You can use your whole TIF tax dollar to pay for expenses that you would otherwise be paying for with the general fund revenue. And you can incentivize specific development and also development in specific areas of town if you wanted to. The cons are there are specific categories that TIF revenues can be spent on. So you can't just use it like general fund revenue, for example. And in terms of administrative burden, and it requires management and reporting in certain instances. So there's not a whole lot of downside, which is why when I come and people say this is too good to be true, I'm like, it kind of is. But, it is a tool. You've had an example of maybe early on. I mean, TIFs are only about 30 years old in Maine. So some of the early TIFs didn't take into account all of these things that you're talking about now that maybe you would have planned for with your original TIF district. So they've gotten a little more sophisticated and planned out. So that's kind of how it goes.
Right, Andy.
Reagan, just a kind of an off-the-wall question. During the process of a TIF negotiation, can you ask the developer for payment in kind? In other words, a developer has 50 acres and they need 30, or they need 45, and that other 5 acres is useful to the town. Can that be part of that, or does that have to be handled separately?
I've never seen that included in negotiation. I've seen payment in lieu of taxes. I've seen
Okay, well, that
other
would-
things, but I guess the main thing I think for a town is to make sure that they understand what they want to incentivize. And you can look at your comp plan. You can come as a council, you can look and say, well, what are our priorities for this year? And really stick to those and be true to them when you're thinking about what you're incentivizing.
Perhaps you could ask for a piece of property as payment in lieu of taxes,
You could.
something like
You
that.
could. I've
Okay.
seen some interesting things that probably wouldn't necessarily fall, well, anyway, I'm not an attorney. I never claimed to be. So you would have to talk to your municipal attorney about that one.
Well, I think we're all here tonight just to throw ideas around and ask questions. So
Sure. Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
thank you very much.
So what I might like to do next is sort of get the ball rolling on a TIF district by contacting our attorney and finding out what would be involved in, as Reagan said, applying with the state in order to create a new TIF district and what that might look like.
Agreed.
Anthony, is this part of our annual attorney's fee, or we're on extra?
No, we are budgeting in FY27 additional funds for this purpose.
Okay.
But we're using TIF funds as opposed to general funds as to pay for that work.
I'm fine. It was just a straight up question.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
On to items 059, discussion with the comprehensive plan implementation committee's recommended housing strategies from the town comprehensive plan.
You're ready? Good to go? Good evening, everybody. Steve McDermott from the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee. Would it be helpful to go over the memo that we sent? Yes. Okay, great. So first, I just want to acknowledge the members of the Comprehensive Plan Committee, Implementation Committee, which are myself, Pat Ladd, Pat Savory, Tim Adams, Whitney Kahn, and George Smith. Pat Ladd is here with us tonight. Pat Savory's online. Apologies that you couldn't be here this evening. So we've taken an approach to go through the various parts of the comprehensive plan, taking one section of the plan by every quarter, using a 3-meeting strategy to discuss and make sure that we're learning as much as we can and then making recommendations to the council to which we think are strategies or policies that would move the community toward the goals identified in the comprehensive plan. So the 3-meeting process looks a little bit like this. Meeting 1, the 6 members of the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee come in with 5 strategies from the identified section. And then we winnow from those 30 to 5 that we think as a group would move the conversation forward. Based on those 5, at the next meeting, we invite in subject matter experts. So our first section that we did this was the housing section. So we invited in Dave Pelton from KV CAP and Norm Mays from Augusta Housing Authority to talk about housing development. Then at meeting 3, we reconvene and say, were we on target from what we've learned from the subject matter experts? Or did they say, you guys have great lofty goals and you don't know what you're talking about, so maybe focus your ideas over here? And that's kind of what we want to do, acknowledging that we've got a lot of experience and knowledge in the room, but maybe not the right experience and not the right knowledge at any given moment. So we want to make sure what we think we know is what we know, and that we're not sending recommendations to you that don't make sense. Part of this is also nested in the fact that there's 319 strategies within the comprehensive plan to be done over the next 10 years. And by sending 5 for each segment at a quarter, feels like a way to break that down into a manageable, achievable pace. So as I mentioned, for the first section of the comprehensive plan that we looked at, it was the housing section. We, again, started with about 30 strategies as a group, winnowed those down to 5, and then invited in Norm Mays from Augusta Housing Authority and Dave Pelton from KV CAP. Augusta Housing Authority is a local housing authority that does development of affordable housing. They also administer a variety of housing choice vouchers to individuals to use throughout the community, and they also administer a variety of other programs like first-time homebuyer education, renter assistance, and housing navigation. KV CAP is a community action program who does a variety of housing-related activities, ranging from administering locally the heating and energy assistance program, HEAP, to doing housing development. Dave talked about some of their affordable housing projects, which are financed through LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits, but also market and affordable home ownership projects that they were doing in Augusta at the time. So a real variety of housing development. From there, we reconvened and landed on, we felt like we were pretty close. Lots of people with housing experience, including Pat Ladd, in the room for this to help guide our conversations. So we landed on the 5 recommendations that I'd like to talk about tonight, related to housing and how we can support our neighbors while also achieving a vision for our community. And I'll just pause for any questions on process.
No, I'm just going to let them know that it didn't print double-sided on the memo or the memorandum, so that's all right. But it is in the hyperlink.
It's a real shame.
Data.
Yeah, so again, we had a variety of strategies, and the first one was focusing on strategy 2.4, energy efficiency improvements. which is investigate and promote opportunities to provide for energy efficiency improvements to reduce home ownership housing costs. And we talked as a group and really saying that it's not just home ownership costs, it's renter costs too. One of the nice things about this strategy and recommending it is that the local Rotary is already partnering with window dressers to help put together window inserts for people so that can help reduce energy and utility costs in the winter. Those energy inserts are window dressers comes to different communities. Individuals can request window inserts for their home. Local volunteers make them. They go home for free. They can use them in perpetuity. So I like this one because it's already happening. A really nice opportunity for the town council to just support the Rotary and saying, we like what you're doing, and advertising it, through whatever, supporting through public channels of communication to make sure all community members know. Strategy 3.2, investigate options for and pursue opportunities to establish relationships with a regional nonprofit housing developer or coalition with neighboring communities to do so. We talked, as I mentioned, we talked with KB Cap and Augusta Housing Authority, who are nonprofit housing developers, but there are other nonprofit housing developers who operate in the broader region, including Lewiston Housing Authority, nonprofit developers such as 3i Housing of Maine. Neighboring communities have already seen some affordable housing development in Monmouth for a home ownership project, bringing 19 units to Monmouth. And I think part of this step is why we're recommending it, is to put the community in an opportunity to respond to opportunities. I think oftentimes when there's a funding opportunity or a parcel of land comes up, people scramble, and it feels more like reacting than responding. And how can we position ourselves to respond as best as possible? Strategy 3.6, the identification of underutilized properties. So pinpoint unutilized or underutilized buildings throughout town that could be repurposed or developed to provide a variety of housing options. As a group, we just want to acknowledge that in addition to land, thinking about under or unutilized buildings. So this could include vacant or underutilized land or buildings that are underutilized right now.
Hey, Stephen, quick question. Did you guys identify any specific properties?
We haven't gone through a GIS parcel yet. We haven't, but I think that's something that town staff could do, or that the other group could do. Staff might know of buildings. I hear a lot about a building where things are stored, and I don't think that's probably a building where we want to do housing development. But a parcel off the top of my head is the parcel where the fire department is, where the new fire station is, extends pretty deep, and I assume that there's public sewer and public water there. And I don't know how that's being utilized, if it's developable, but we might think about what type of housing could we build to incentivize more volunteers within our fire department, thinking about the presentation from the chiefs the other day. Most people might not want to live next to the fire station, but there's probably a segment of people who might find that beneficial. Strategy 7.1, lot size adjustments. Consider reducing lot sizes in specific locations to increase affordability in developing land. Through our discussions, we also wanted to recognize the work of the planning board, who has done a lot of work to bring the community in line with state regulations, but also thinking about how these could be done to incentivize the type of development like a pocket neighborhood for individuals who might not want to mow their lawn anymore, snow blow, snow shovel, plow. And then 7.4, which I think mirrors really nicely after Reagan's presentation, promote and encourage the development of housing using municipal tools. And that can range from zoning ordinance to TIFs and credit enhancement agreements, to how are we doing what is our infrastructure to accept applications for development, and how is our planning board responsive to needs or not. Those were the 5 that we wanted to highlight for your consideration as you think about your policy setting over the year, partially because some are already being done and really just you supporting them would be beneficial. But then there's others like promoting, and the conversation you had this evening is really in line with thinking about how the municipality can play a role in housing development without being a housing developer.
Couple things I'm looking at this. One is, when you, on 7.4, when it's disposing of underutilized municipal owned land, I'm very hesitant about that because there's not a lot of land around. And if we need land for municipal development, I don't know how much land we own around, isn't around town, but I'd be, hesitant about getting rid of some of that because once you get rid of it, you don't have it. And if we have to expand any facilities around the town or anything like that, I'd be careful about that. And the other thing is, when you're looking at land, you guys putting together like a list of stuff.
We are not putting together lists. These are recommendations to the council to suggest action to either the appropriate bodies or to staff. But I think just to comment on, land is one of the few resources that we're not making any more of in most places of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Outside of Hawaii, right, and other islands.
Yeah.
But there are certain parcels. So the city of Bangor had a tree lot that it didn't need anymore. And they recognized that they wanted affordable housing and market rate housing. So what they did was they actually ran the infrastructure. They ran, I believe they ran public sewer, public water, and utilities to the lot. And then RFP'd it, put it out for procurement for RFP with the use of housing because they had determined it wasn't going to be viable for them. They had a need and they would be able to generate revenue from it as well. So I think that's just an opportunity to how we think about which land we might need in the future and whether it fits our foreseeable needs or not. If it would be helpful, we can certainly work with Dawn and others to put together a list of underutilized municipal land, but I think there would be others that have a better perspective of how properties are being used.
Yeah, because they're not making any more land. If there's going to be more development here, you're going to have more people, more students, more this, more that. And if you don't have the land or the capacity, know what else you're going to do. Eminent domain. So I'd like to know, I'd be hesitant about disposing of.
Be good to start with an assessment of what we do have.
Yeah.
I
Wouldn't mind this.
made a note.
I figured you did.
I have a question if I
Go
may.
ahead.
And this is actually for you, Pat. Can you come up to the mic just for a sec? I'm just wondering, given the conversation that we just had about a downtown TIF district, and since, again, strategy 7.4 is to, use municipal tools in order to encourage the development of housing. Do you think there are opportunities within a downtown TIF district for maybe a carve out for affordable housing? I mean, do you see any opportunities like that in the downtown area?
Yeah. Yes. I think what we're talking about at the mill, when we're talking about having the developer come in there, is great. What we did at Subway was great, that's not the way to say it, but above Subway, getting those. But there are other underutilized structures down there that I don't know how big the downtown district TIF would extend, but I do think there are other opportunities. And it's needed.
No doubt.
Any questions?
No questions, but I am interested in light of the conversation we had and exploring those because I think that's the best way to expedite our value to the town, right? To get, it moving. So.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you all. If I could have 2 seconds, I know.
Absolutely.
Late. I wanted to just note that I looked at Realtor.com on Saturday afternoon in between Easter egg hunts. And so in Winthrop right now, there's 7 single family homes on the market. with a high price of $965,000 and a low price of $275,000. The average is 556,000 with a median price of 499,000. When we think about affordability in Winthrop, there's often this big conversation of what does affordability mean? And often we can talk about that with a lowercase a of what's affordable to somebody at 30, where no more than 30% of their income is being paid towards housing. The median income in Winthrop in 2025 was $81,000, which means the median home price that would be affordable to that person with a variety of factors, right? Interest rate, down payment is $251,000. So the lowest home for sale in Winthrop would not be affordable to somebody with the median income in Winthrop.
Did you do that with like today's interest rates?
So I did the math. That information is pulled from Maine Housing's Housing Affordability Index. Oh, I did run the math with, today's interest rate. When we talk about affordable capital A, affordable housing programs for home ownership. So capital A, that's affordable to people, that's income restricted to people with incomes at 120% of their median income. And I'll give you a frame of reference there instead of just 120%. In Kennebec County, a two-person household, the 120% area median income is $84,000. If there's no down payment, the home that they can afford at 6.5% interest, $5,000 in utilities annually, $1,200 in insurance, mill rate at 23.10 is $249,545. If they have a 5% down payment, that goes up to 262, 10%, 277, 293, and then 311, up 5% increases up to 20%. So still most of the homes for sale in Winthrop right now wouldn't be affordable.
To you, Mike. Mike. Microphone.
Give you a stick or so you can smack me with that thing. The disturbing thing about this is that a significant portion of our teachers and police, et cetera, other municipal employees, particularly if there's single income home houses, couldn't afford that. And that could be in the long run a problem for the town.
Linda?
I mean, one of the things that I'd like to know is, the legislature is giving away all this, money for developing affordable housing. I'd like to know at this affordable housing, what are they selling these homes for?
Yeah, great question. So
Because to me, it's like, I don't see them selling it no $250,000. So what are they selling these houses for? And are they really building affordable housing that people can, because that's a problem. If
Yeah.
they're getting all these tax breaks and this money from the state and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, whether they are or not, I'd like to know what's going on out there.
yeah, so that's a great question. So I think you might be referencing two programs that were funded through the legislature, the Rural Affordable Rental Housing Program and the Affordable Home Ownership Program, which were funded by one-time allocations from the legislature to Maine Housing 2 times or 3 times each at this point and being considered in the current supplemental budget that's being reviewed. For the Affordable Home Ownership Program, when we talk about affordability for home ownership in state statute, that's individuals and households at 120% of their median income. The homes for sale in Kennebec County cannot exceed $350,000. So when we look at a 4-person household, the max that they can afford with a 5% down payment is $349,000, $445,009. So they're right there.
What I'm saying is when these developers are, there was, there's money out there that they use. And I guess the question is, are they building homes that are in those?
Yes.
They are.
Yeah, and that's the project that I mentioned in Monmouth is a 19-unit single home ownership project where 13 will be affordable at a sales price of $350,000.
And how do they determine who gets those?
It's through the open market.
So if there's 10 people bidding on a house,
It's income. I'm sure you'd have to talk to a realtor and the banker about how they make those and accept those offers, but They have to be income qualified and the sales price cannot exceed $350,000.
If you get into a competitive bidding.
That's what I'm asking.
you-
Like, how do
so-
they determine who's getting the houses?
Let's,
Not?
you cannot. The sales price is maxed at $350,000. There
Then
is
does it
no,
become a lottery situation at all? You don't know probably,
it's
but
probably, I don't know. I don't want to speak to how a realtor would determine that. I'd assume they go by when you receive an offer. They receive it, they don't receive it, they know that there's a cap. And I would assume that if they receive a good offer at the cap, there's no incentive to wait for another offer to come in. But I don't want to speak to a process that I haven't been involved in those finer points, but that is the cap.
yeah, I mean, it's not so much a question for Steve, because he probably knows my thoughts on this as well, is that we have a huge problem in this area because, you know, when I moved away, graduated college and wanted to look at moving back into Winthrop, that was not an option at a realistic price. So I'm trying to think and look at kids whose families are here and want to come back and are looking at entry level jobs that are not going to be $80,000. And how do we attract or expect families to maintain a presence in this town if we don't have the ability to offer affordable housing to them? And I'm 350,000, it's not affordable. So, I mean, I wish there was a better, more aggressive program that the state would utilize to get people in, and that, you know, that we could then piggyback on to be able to provide for teachers, for municipal staff, for people who want or have, you know, roots in this town, because right now it's not going to happen. We're going to lose population and the important workers that we need in order to have a competitive economic system in this area. It's not affordable. They're not going to come here. They're going to go way up north or somewhere else. So I think that's something we have to think about moving forward.
Linda?
It's not just around this area, it's around the whole state. I mean, it really is. It's not just unique to our area. But
It goes
again,
back to the basic economics, supply and demand.
yeah, I
There's a
mean, I don't
shortage
know
of
that that's gonna,
houses, the price go through the
yeah.
roof.
I agree with you, unless you're gonna lower that price, $350,000 is even a lot for these younger people. And to be quite honest, I don't, you know, either they're gonna have to build houses.
Only option out there.
Right, but what I'm saying is if these developers are developing, you know, if they're developing $300,000 to $400,000 homes, that's not affordable, in my opinion.
I agree,
And-
but it
and-
may be a case where some others that are in the area buy up and their other houses become available. You know,
I mean, there's-
it still adds to.
It is, but you know what, to be quite honest, that scenario is gone by the wayside. I mean, there's people from out of state buying these homes for a fraction. They're just coming in and paying, you know, whatever. And that's the problem, is even if there is inventory, I don't know what the issue, I don't know how to solve it. But all I do know is when a developer is developing these houses, it needs to be affordable. And $350,000 is not affordable.
Is not, and there's,
I totally agree with you.
there are market forces, like you said.
Yes.
I happen to own with my family 30 acres, and I can't tell you, monthly, I get inquiries from out of state who want to develop land. And I think a lot of them just want to put it, because it's closer to a lake, they want to put up, whether it's rentals or whatever the short-term stuff is. And if we keep having that situation occur over and over and over again, we're never going to be able, unless there's some other force that corrects it, we're not going to have that opportunity.
If I might, I think that, Roy, what you're talking about is just there is a fundamental supply-demand function to how the housing market works. Also, housing functions as a way to generate wealth. Most families traditionally have accumulated familial wealth over generations through, or over 30 years, through how much a home appreciates. Right now, we're seeing homes appreciate much faster and become not just a long-term asset class, but a short-term asset class. One of the things that can be done by the municipality is taking a look at what are the housing needs of current residents. And I often think, we often talk about our our older neighbors who want to stay in the community. It is good for them to stay in community, stay connected to their natural supports, but there are no smaller homes. Going back to the homes that are on the market right now, the average bedroom size is 4.14. There aren't homes on the market that meet the physical characteristic needs of households that are downsizing. So can we change our zoning ordinance to allow for, again, pocket neighborhoods is one solution that reduces the number of acres needed or street frontage needed, but allows people to live in homes that they can, one, financially manage, but also physically manage, right? At a certain point in my life, I will be looking for single story living so that I can stay in my home with a heat source, if we're using oil at that point, the oil tank on that first floor so that I can figure out when it's going to run out and not have to go down to the basement. If, tonight I was feeling pretty sore getting up and down, and that's going to come at a certain point. So I think what are the steps that we can do to create a community where our teachers, firefighters, police officers, people who work at Hannaford, people who want to work at Walgreens can live in community or near community, but also so that people who've lived in community for a very long time can stay where their neighbors are, and then maybe their kids can come back.
Hi, Steve. So did a lot of listening tonight. I think that's a great suggestion. I remember quite a few years ago when I wasn't sitting here, Mr. Barry Crowell came up and said, hey, I'd like to do something out behind Audette's Hardware. Didn't have the acreage to build it, but he was looking to build basically what you're talking about, homes where our aging community, they could, really low maintenance, they can, whether it was a condo or an apartment or just a house, 1 or 2 bedroom where they could stay and, they're close to the amenities. You got Walgreens, or at that time it was Rite Aid, but you got Audette's as a hardware store, and then you also got Hannaford there's close by. So I think that's all very important. So I think I kind of would lean towards maybe something in our zoning ordinances within town to kind of reduce that. Also, when listening to you and people were talking with, there's the TIF district and also affordable housing. And when they were talking at one time of having people, and I know they built above Subway, which is great. The apartments look gorgeous. I was a landlord. I understand what it's like, but the rents, the rents are just blowing away. I think the gentleman presented to build the apartments in the Winthrop Mill, but it just seems like for a 1-bedroom apartment, it was going to be like $1,700-$1,800 a month for a 1-bedroom. Who can afford that? If you can't afford a $350,000 home, which your mortgage is getting up to that, almost $300,000, you're talking a little over 2, right? So who's going to be able to afford the rent? So what are we doing about that, and maybe capping something there for these folks that, people that may want to start their own lives and get an apartment so they can get out, still save some money, but still live on their own in independence. So get out of mom and dad's basement, I would say, but.
I agree with you on the zoning. I'd be willing to look at. But I will tell you, Maine, for some reason, whatever reason it is, the rents here are just out of this world. They're not like that in parts of Connecticut. I just came from Connecticut this weekend. My town. They are not like that in Texas, where my.
I'm glad I'm not a landlord anymore. I could not consciously charge people that.
What it is, but the rents up here are just outrageous. And what people are.
I know it's not you, Steve. I ask you because I know you're kind
It's
of
just, it
got
really
in
is.
the know and you kind of.
They're not.
Yeah.
We have more money down there than we do up here.
And I look at this in our housing section and how do we make it affordable for folks, right? I know we here will try to do, I'll try to do my part and, maybe create a TIF district and maybe, put some restrictions on some folks that may do something that would good with that. But how do we do that? How do we tackle that? Because it is, to Linda's point, it is a main thing.
They laugh at us. They just can't believe what we're charging. And in Portland, it's out of this world. It's just crazy. They're like, what
Linda,
are you guys doing up there?
Linda,
Like,
need you talking into that a little bit more. So
What?
need you talking to Michael. There you go.
It's
They
just-
can't
it's
hear you out there in the audience.
laugh at us up here.
Yeah.
It from, they're like, what are you guys doing up there? You're charging rent that people just simply can't afford. you're talking about, other towns and cities around the country that just are not charging these. And we have less money up here. I don't get it. I really don't.
I think some of it is market driven. If you can't afford a house and the rent is 20% less, even though it's outrageous, that's where you're going to go.
Housing problems down in Connecticut and in Texas. They got housing problems all over the place, but
Yeah, true.
up here, they are charging a lot of money in rent.
If you
It's crazy.
if you can't find a place to live and you got something that's 20% above your budget or what you're forced to pay the rent.
Yeah. I mean, it's
that-
crazy. It's astronomical up here. I just,
So I threw it at you, Steve, so I kind of let you respond at it.
You're okay. Happy to take it. I think part of
Crazy.
what we need to zoom out on is, I think right now we're focusing on how do we find housing for people at certain economic ends of the economic spectrum. But
Sure.
taking a step back and acknowledging that we have a shortage of housing all along the price points, right? So when Maine General is looking to recruit doctors and they're like, this is the home I can get for $500,000. If I go to Nashville, I can get a much different home for $500,000. Right? So it's not just affordable apartments that might be financed with affordable housing. It's just taking a step back and recognizing we need to be, I think I would encourage us to be open to all types of housing and not overlooking at one and overlooking at the other, but in determining what aligns with our values and what you can do as a council. And I think just want to step back to your original question, how can we help people who are just starting out, or I think who are just ending their working careers, right? How do we do that? And one of the tools, so we talked about the affordable home ownership program that Maine Housing ran previously. They also had the Rural Affordable Rental Housing Program, which was a rental housing program for up to 18 units, which is really kind of nicely sized for a community like Winthrop, for households that were earning up to 80% of every median income. In a quick point of reference, so for a two-person household, that's $55,000. There's also, so in the things that the actions the council can do to support that, right, I think are looking at TIFs and TIF districts, setting the tone for the conversations. If somebody comes in and says, we want something slightly denser than what has historically been, developed, is that an automatic no because that's not how it's been done before? Or is that something we're open to because it helps us achieve whatever goals we might have as a community? And then the other one is the low-income housing tax credit program is the largest tool to finance the development of affordable housing across the country and in Maine. And that program typically is affordable to households earning 50 and 60% of every median income. And when you think of individuals on fixed Social Security or SSDI, or our staff who are working at Hannaford's, our teachers, our first-time teachers, I think we had the conversation, we're still just below $45,000 for starting teachers. 60% area median income for a two-person household is $42,000. So when we talk about low-income housing, and when people say low income, they're thinking about low-income housing tax credits. So affordable housing for individuals and households that are qualified to live there are our working neighbors. So I think that part of what the council can do is set the tone for the conversations. And when people say, this is different than what we've done before, the question is different bad?
Sure. Thank you.
I mean, that's not actionable for you?
Well, no, I got to ask you the question and I kind of got to state and listen, like I said, and understand some more things tonight and have some more things to put forth down the line. But I do appreciate you coming up and talking with us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Right. Okay. We'll move on to, I guess we're 062, consideration of recommendations from the appointments committee. Did I miss one?
The appointments committee has no recommendations at this time.
Great thing. I overstepped. So I missed item 060, consideration of the minutes from March 2nd, March 16th, and March 30th, 2026, the council meetings.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All are in favor? Now we'll do items 062, consideration of recommendations from the appointments committee. Yes, please.
Appointments committee has no approvals at this time.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to other business. So this was the point where public comment, or if we have anybody still left in the audience who'd like to say anything else, or anybody online. Seeing none, we'll move on to the town manager report, please.
So last week, yes, I sent you a request from the Fayette Select Board wanting to delay the implementation of our capital improvement plan for the ambulance service. I recommend that you deny that request.
So moved.
Agreed.
Is there consensus on that?
Agreed, yes.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier in the meeting, on April the 27th, we'll have the public hearing and vote on the school budget. And we will also continue, it's mainly a budget workshop. We'll continue reviewing some of our budgets, including the library, general assistance code, planning, and recreation. And then on May 4th, that's when we'll start to do a deep dive into our capital improvements.
So the 27th.
Yes. Yes, we have to have that vote on that date in order to get the absentee ballots out on time for the June 9th election. Last week also, I learned about, we do some, our bank is Androscoggin Bank, but we do some investments with Northeast Bank because they offer some pretty competitive rates when it comes to CDs and CDAR. So we're a customer, and they made us aware of this community grant program. And all it took was a simple email, and we were able to get $2,500 for the Winthrop Food Bank because the town contributes to their budget. So that was kind of a nice little perk of being a customer of Northeast Bank. Just a reminder, the Spirit of America Award, I think those nominations are due in June. So maybe start thinking about if there's anyone in the community that you think we should honor with that Spirit of America Award. And lastly, my daughter is in town from New York City, and so I'm going to come in and work just a few hours in the morning while she's still slumbering. And then I will be out of the office on Wednesday, but otherwise here on Thursday and Friday. That's my report.
Thank you.
We had one tonight. No, it's a public hearing on the school budget, which is required by law. And then the council will need to vote. And then we will continue doing our reviews of some of the other departmental budgets for the municipality. Yeehaw. That's what we say down in Texas.
And we discussed it in a meeting prior to that Dr. Foley came up and gave her presentation. You know, I understand. I get that. No, she did her presentation. I think some of us had some questions. I called and discussed some of my concerns with her on some of that. She came and I think everybody else kind of talked with her, and she came and addressed some of those. So I think from what I gathered, and I won't speak for the whole council here, but I think most of the ones that are present here were saying they were kind of in favor from what they've done. I think the impact to the taxpayer is 3.28%. Their overall budget is increasing 5.4. But yep. I think I would agree with you, Linda. I had my concerns. I mean, I would probably think, I don't know.
So Linda, why don't
did
I
ask
send
him
you
that.
the link to the video from tonight so you can see the conversation and the presentation?
I told her that. I gave her my thoughts of where she should be at with it. I don't know if they said they couldn't do any more, so.
These guys are just, taxes in this town are just going
Understood.
really struggling. This damn revaluation, you guys are going to catapult those those taxes way above what people are going to be comfortable with. You talk about affordable housing, but what you guys aren't talking about or you're not looking at is the impacts of some of this spending. The spending has not gone down.
Understood.
It's not. And you know what? In a lot of these companies, they don't have 5% increases and whatever every damn year. I think you guys are, with all the budget and stuff, I think we need to be a lot more conservative on that.
I think at least I'll speak for me. I feel the same way. I think we also need to be very conservative on when we're looking at this, especially with the reeval. I think that's my biggest concern. I had a discussion with Dr. Foley, and my concern was to say if they could help and reduce it more, because I think the impact would be less than 3% would be a lot better for the folks. And I think she did it. And I don't know if she was super happy with it, but I asked her to put a projection plan of what they might need to spend for the next few years, because I know there needs to be some improvements done. And so and they did do that in their presentation. So I'm kind of happy with that. Agreed. I think hopefully this council is around when we do the reevaluation, that we look and evaluate that mill rate at that point, so we can vote unanimously and reduce that mill rate. So we'll reflect for the reevaluation to kind of make things a little more level for folks. But I don't think you're too far off from all the thoughts we had here for the whole council. I think we were all thinking that what you just stated, but we'd let them present, and I think they were up here stating their case. So
Wait a second. Wait, Linda. Wait. Again, our new revenue for the municipality is $300,000 in excess of increased costs this year.
Doesn't mean we need to spend it.
I just say, if Linda, if we were spending it, it'd be the revenues would match the expenditures.
No, I get it. Right? Way that the municipal budget crafted. And if you add in the school, what are we talking about for an increase to this town?
So I'll pipe in.
It's gonna completely depend
on our CIP,
on how much the council wants to invest in capital improvements.
Yes. I think goal-wise, if we have to take, moving into the reevaluation, and I ran some numbers with the help of AI, as long as we maintain as close as, because we have to look at a bigger picture. We can't say like year to year to year. We have to maintain trying to keep our overall expenditures as close to 5% or under as possible. That's combined, school and municipal side. If we do that, going through, when we get our reevaluation, which would be 2028, Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong.
So it'll be performed in this fiscal year, 2026 or 26, 27, and then it will take effect in 27, 28.
And looking at that, in order to keep, so if I basically did a $500,000 house assessed, would be maybe $700 more. So that's like the median. So you would see a shift on either side of it, and we would be able to bring the mill rate down to 14.5 to 15.
If we do.
And that keeps us at our same spending without having to.
You're assuming that the valuations haven't gone up. The valuations.
Oh, no, they're going up.
I know, but what I'm saying is even with the valuation going up, even reducing it by that little amount, you're still going to be paying a lot more. And I'll tell you another thing, $700 a year for taxes is a lot of money to people. It's
That's why we have to keep doing it.
And that's not okay, because if you're looking at the raises that people are getting out there, they're not getting 5% raises. So when you guys are increasing these budgets by 5%, that's a lot for people out there to be able to afford if their houses are that. I'm just saying is.
But people want roads paved. I mean, you hear it.
I get it, and I get it. But what I'm saying
is
some of the schools have been increasing over time astronomically. And I think we need they need to rein in their spending. particularly right before revaluation for this town. It's.
Well, they went
I'm
from
telling you,
9
it's
to
gonna be really detrimental to people.
I kind of think we got to look across the board. I mean, personally,
Revenue, hold on, just because we have more revenues does not mean we can spend a little bit more because we got more revenues.
the 2000, the last reval,
I mean,
everybody promised us, and I wasn't, of course, on the council back then. But I think that the values were, don't, remember, I owned that business on the lake. Don't worry, the values are going to go up, but the mill rate's going to go down. Well, I think the mill rate down, 1% for 1 year.
Yeah.
And then bang, okay? We can't do that.
No.
We can't do that to our citizens.
I will not be on board with that.
No,
What?
we have no choice. It cannot, I mean, I don't
Once
think
all
the
the time was
council
over, the year after that.
planned for that. I don't think the councils had any idea what they were spending. I don't think they knew what the revenues were. I don't think they were tracking them on a monthly basis
Yeah.
like we are now.
Or
And we were
quarterly.
ahead of the game if you look at the financial reporting, coming in at 60% of the year and still, or 61% of the year, spending 57% of budgets. We're on track to being where we need to be. We have made a lot of effort to do that.
just don't have to go up every single year. They don't. They don't have to go up. It's prioritizing within your budgets.
Well, we're running on a deficit from previous councils, in my opinion, and trying to make up for it. Because we lost investment. We didn't invest in our infrastructure. We didn't invest in the roads. Look at the town beach. I mean, there are things that have to be prioritized. And yeah, we have to be careful how we do it so we don't blow that mill rate out of the water, because if we get the reevaluation and we can't readjust it accurately, then we're in trouble. That's all I gotta say.
Anybody else? Anything?
No.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Well, who wants to hear me anyway, right?
Right. All right. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? All in favor. Thank you, guys.
If you're adding in the revenues, but you know what? No, it should be 3% or 2%.